Picture this. A medical student walks into a patient's room, pulls up their electronic health record, and instead of just checking symptoms and vitals, they open something called a whole person care note. They ask about what matters most to the patient, document their life story, and capture their unique context beyond just the medical diagnosis. Today, we're diving into how Loma Linda University School of Medicine is revolutionizing medical education with a whole-person, relationship-centered approach that's producing doctors who see patients as complete human beings, not just collections of symptoms. You'll understand what makes their model unique, how they're measuring empathy and compassion, and why this could be the future of medical training. So let's start with the basics. What exactly does whole person care mean, and how is it different from what most medical schools are teaching?
Well, according to the page content from Loma Linda's Institute for Health Policy Leadership, whole person care goes way beyond just treating disease. Since the 1960s, this concept has been gaining traction, and Paul Tillich described it perfectly. Humans shouldn't be seen as separate levels, like body, soul, and spirit, but as a multidimensional unity.
Multidimensional unity, that's a pretty profound way to think about patients.
Exactly. And Loma Linda takes this even further with their mission to continue the teaching and healing ministry of Jesus Christ. Their values include something called PRISM principles: physical, relational, intellectual, spiritual, and mental, all within a loving relationship with God.
So they're not just training doctors, they're training healers with a spiritual foundation. How does this actually play out in their curriculum?
This is where it gets really interesting. They have something called Christian physician formation courses that run longitudinally through the first 2 years. These address theological, ethical, and interpersonal relationships relative to healthcare delivery. It's not just an elective, it's core curriculum.
Wait, so they're actually teaching theology alongside anatomy and physiology?
Yes, and they've also created something called patient inquiry, a novel curriculum that helps students integrate basic science concepts with clinical scenarios while fostering teamwork and self-directed learning. It's like they're breaking down the silos between different types of knowledge.
That's fascinating. But here's what I'm wondering. How do you actually measure whether someone is becoming more empathetic or compassionate? That seems pretty subjective.
This is where Loma Linda's research really shines. There's a dissertation from their program that developed something called the Compassionate HEART framework, that stands for Helping Ease, Alleviate, and Relieve Therapeutically.
HEART, I love that acronym. What does this framework actually measure?
It's a structured framework that progresses from vulnerability and authenticity through clinical knowledge, emotional intelligence, empathy, compassion, rapport, trust, and culminates in shared decision-making. And here's the kicker. They validated it with strong psychometric properties.
Psychometric properties, so this isn't just touchy-feely stuff, it's actual science?
Absolutely. The Compassionate HEART patient questionnaire has a Cronbach's alpha of 0.86, which is excellent reliability, and a robust three-factor structure explaining 85.9% of variability. They even found significant correlations between higher scores and reduced fatigue in patients with persistent pain.
So compassionate care actually improves patient outcomes measurably. That's incredible.
Right, and the qualitative analysis revealed 3 key themes that patients experience: clinical competence with connection, trust and safety, and empowerment through partnership. It's mapping those invisible pathways that transform clinical encounters from transactional exchanges to therapeutic moments.
Okay, so they've got the theory and the measurement down. How do they actually structure the learning experience to build these relationships?
This is where their life communities come in. According to the 2026 Conference on Medicine and Religion, they create groups of 9 students paired with a physician-faculty mentor for 3 years. These groups engage in everything together: discussion groups, labs, clinical skills, team-based learning, even clinical rotations.
9 students with 1 mentor for 3 years? That's like having a medical school family.
Exactly. The mission is to facilitate safe, significant relationships and foster community while students develop their unique professional identity, sense of purpose, and self-efficacy rooted in faith. Students are required to meet individually with their mentor twice per year for coaching.
That level of personal attention is pretty remarkable. How does this compare to traditional medical school advising?
Well, the page content mentions research from Johns Hopkins on relationship-centered advising that shows most medical student advising has traditionally focused just on career stuff: finding mentors, choosing electives, specialty choice, matching. But relationship-centered advising values personal experiences, mutual respect, and earned trust.
So instead of just what specialty do you want, it's who are you becoming as a person and a healer.
Precisely. And Johns Hopkins found that student and faculty satisfaction with this model is high, with annual evaluations consistently showing high degrees of trust and satisfaction. It creates a relationally anchored platform for developing personal and professional identities.
Now, I noticed something really interesting in the page content. They've launched a new capstone clerkship focused specifically on whole person care. What's that about?
This is brand new, according to their alumni association. Loma Linda just launched a 2-week clerkship for fourth-year students to apply whole-person care principles in various clinical settings. Dean Tamara Thomas called it the culmination of years of thoughtful curriculum development.
A whole clerkship just for this? That seems like a pretty big commitment.
It builds on everything they've learned in Christian physician formation, social determinants of health curriculum, and community engagement. Students do small group rotations, simulation exercises, and apply advanced whole-person care techniques in patient interactions.
And here's what really caught my attention. They're actually changing the electronic health record system. Tell me about this whole person care note.
This is revolutionary. They're introducing a specific note type in EPIC, the electronic health record system, where students conduct patient-centered interviews to capture each patient's unique story and highlight what matters most to them. It's not about medical decision-making, it's about understanding the person.
So they're literally changing how medical records work to include the human story, not just the medical data.
Exactly. Students learn how to introduce themselves, conduct interviews to understand the patient's life context, and document it. These notes are reviewed by the whole person care clerkship director before being added to the official medical record.
That's incredible. Dean Thomas said they hope this inspires not just students, but faculty, residents, and fellows to engage with patients' whole stories. It could change the entire culture of the hospital.
And speaking of changing culture, they're also revolutionizing how they approach lifestyle medicine. According to a recent study in Frontiers in Education, Loma Linda dedicates 21 hours to exercise within their 113-hour lifestyle medicine core.
Wait, 113 hours of lifestyle medicine? Most medical schools barely touch on that.
Right, and their unique approach builds upon their strong foundation in lifestyle medicine, integrating exercise physiology into a broader context of preventive and holistic healthcare. They're training doctors to counsel patients on physical activity and prescribe exercise for both preventive and therapeutic purposes.
So they're not just treating disease, they're preventing it. They're training health coaches, not just diagnosticians.
Exactly. The curriculum covers exercise effects on biochemical processes, physiological systems, and its role in disease prevention and treatment. They're proposing to develop a coordinated exercise thread across all 4 years of medical education.
This is starting to paint a picture of a completely different kind of medical education. How does their approach to empathy specifically work?
Well, their Institute for Health Policy Leadership defines empathy as a cognitive attribute that involves understanding the inner experiences and perspectives of patients, combined with the capability to communicate this understanding. It's about grasping and understanding the mental and emotional lives of others.
And they believe empathy can be taught?
Absolutely. They quote John Steinbeck, "You can only understand people if you feel them in yourself." The page content suggests that empathy is not only important for making moral decisions, but also for motivating healthcare providers to perform what is morally right.
That's a beautiful quote. So empathy becomes the foundation for ethical medical practice.
Right, and they connect this to their Seventh-day Adventist perspective. Richard Rice developed a model of whole-person care called ministry healing that situates physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social elements into the life and ministry of Jesus.
So they're using Jesus as the ultimate model for whole person care. That's a pretty high standard.
And their values reflect this. Compassion is defined as reflecting the love of God with respect, mercy, and empathy. Excellence exceeds expectations with effectiveness and reliability. Humility puts self-importance aside for the greater good of others.
Those are some pretty profound values to build a medical curriculum around. How do they ensure students actually internalize these rather than just going through the motions?
That's where the longitudinal nature of their program really matters. The life communities span 3 years, and in the 3rd year, physician mentors lead reflection sessions once every clerkship, allowing students to wrestle with and make meaning from their clinical experiences.
So it's not just learning about empathy in a classroom, it's processing real patient encounters with mentors who can guide that reflection.
Exactly. And the page content mentions that the goal of medical curriculum has shifted from teaching comprehensive knowledge to developing adaptive expertise, which relies on the healthy brain, body, and spirit of the practitioner.
Adaptive expertise, that's interesting. So they're not just cramming facts into students' heads, they're developing their capacity to adapt and respond to complex human situations.
Right, and they've partnered with religion and marriage and family therapy faculty to design curriculum that spans all 4 years. It's truly interdisciplinary. They're bringing in expertise from fields that understand human relationships and spiritual development.
That's fascinating. Marriage and family therapy faculty teaching medical students, you don't see that at most medical schools.
And their internal medicine residency continues this focus. According to the page content, it's a 3-year program focused on whole person care, serving patients in some of the country's most medically underserved areas.
So the whole person approach continues into residency training. They're really committed to this model long term.
Absolutely. Their primary care track emphasizes the role of the internist as a member of an interdisciplinary healthcare team, with rotations in outpatient geriatrics, adolescent medicine, psychiatry, dermatology, community resources, and women's health.
Community resources, that's interesting. So they're teaching doctors to understand the social context their patients live in.
Right, and the ambulatory care experience emphasizes preparation for integrated, whole-person primary care. Residents learn procedural skills like flexible sigmoidoscopy and skin biopsies to deliver comprehensive primary care.
So when you step back from all this, what we're seeing is a complete reimagining of medical education. Instead of just training technicians who can diagnose and treat disease, Loma Linda is training healers who see patients as whole human beings with physical, emotional, spiritual, and social needs.
Exactly. And they've created measurable frameworks to ensure this isn't just good intentions, it's evidence-based practice. The compassionate HEART model shows that relationship-centered care actually improves patient outcomes.
What's really striking is how they've integrated this philosophy into every aspect of the educational experience. From the curriculum structure with life communities, to the electronic health records with whole person care notes, to the extensive lifestyle medicine training.
And the longitudinal nature means students aren't just learning about empathy in a single course, they're developing it over years through sustained relationships with mentors and peers, processing real clinical experiences, and reflecting on their own growth as healers.
Here's what I think is most powerful about this model. It recognizes that healing is fundamentally relational. You can't separate the technical aspects of medicine from the human connection between doctor and patient.
And in a healthcare system that often feels increasingly impersonal and transactional, Loma Linda is proving that there's another way. They're showing that you can train doctors who are both clinically excellent and deeply compassionate.
The fact that they're documenting patient stories in the medical record alongside clinical data feels revolutionary. It's saying that what matters to patients as human beings is just as important as their lab values and vital signs.
Right, and this could be the future of medical education. As healthcare becomes more complex and patients demand more personalized care, we need doctors who can navigate not just the science, but the art of healing.
So the next time you're in a doctor's office, imagine if your physician had been trained not just to diagnose your condition, but to understand your story, to see you as a whole person with hopes and fears and relationships that all impact your health. That's the kind of doctor Loma Linda is training. Thanks for joining us on Co-Pilot Podcasts. Remember that whole person care note we talked about at the beginning? It's not just changing medical records, it's changing how we think about what it means to heal and be healed.